The fluorescent lights buzzed above the packed conference room. Guy Lowell, our CEO, slid the controls certification at Jacobs the polished table toward me. His smile was perfect, practiced. "Sign it, Iceland." I picked up my pen, felt its weight in my fingers. The document sat there, waiting. Around the table, executives watched. The audit committee chair, Piers Jacobs, lifted his head from his phone. My pen hovered over the signature line. Then I clicked it closed. No. Guy's smile didn't crack, but something shifted in the room's air. Piers Jacobs straightened in his chair. The CFO, Harlan Morris, stopped typing on his laptop. Guy's voice stayed smooth. "I'm sorry, what?" I said, "No, I won't sign this." The silence stretched. Papers rustled. Someone cleared their throat. Guy's eyes never left mine, but I saw his jaw tighten just slightly. He stood up slowly, that perfect smile still in place. "Iceland, let's continue this conversation in my office." His voice was silk over steel. "Close my door behind you." I followed him out, feeling every pair of eyes in the room watching us leave. My heart pounded, but my hands stayed steady. 3 years of compliance work had prepared me for this moment. I'd seen the warning signs for months, collected the evidence piece by piece. Now the game was finally beginning. Guy's office smelled like expensive cologne and leather. He closed the door with a soft click, then stood close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "You like your job here, Iceland?" His voice was barely above a whisper, intimate and threatening at the same time. I kept my voice level. "I like facts more than my job." He laughed, a sound with no humor in it. He walked to his wall of framed articles and awards, stopping at a Wall Street piece about Delta Systems' meteoric rise. His finger traced the headline. "I built this company from nothing. 12 years ago, we had 6 employees in a basement. Now look at us." He turned back to me. "Success requires flexibility. The numbers don't lie, Guy. Numbers are just stories we tell ourselves." He moved to his desk, picked up a crystal paperweight. "You have until Friday to reconsider. Think about your career, Iceland. Think about your future." He set down the paperweight with a sharp click. "Then let's make some new facts," he said, his smile returning. "Close of business Friday. Don't disappoint me." The threat hung in the air between us like smoke. I'd heard rumors about what happened to employees who Jacobs'd Guy Lowell. Sudden performance reviews, mysterious layoffs, careers that simply vanished overnight. But I wasn't backing down. Not when I knew what I knew. 6 months earlier, I'd been just another compliance manager doing routine checks. That Tuesday morning, I was reviewing pilot program contracts when I spotted something odd. The MedTech Innovation pilot showed revenue booked for March 15th, but the contract start date was March 20th. We'd recognized income before the service period even began. I pulled up the PDF properties. The file had been edited at 11:47 p.m. on March 31st, the night after quarter close. Someone had backdated it. I flagged it in our system and sent a note to Harlan Morris in finance. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and "thanks for the catch." But nothing changed. The revenue stayed on our books. 2 days later, my computer pinged with an IT security alert. Unusual after-hours access detected. Contracts folder, March 31st, 11:45 p.m. The timestamp matched the file edit exactly. I stared at the screen. Someone had been in our system that night, changing dates, fixing numbers. The question was who. I saved the IT alert to my personal drive and started a new folder. I labeled it Documentation. At that point, I thought it was just a mistake. Maybe someone had rushed to fix a clerical error before the quarter closed. I almost deleted the folder twice that first week. But something nagged at me, a feeling that this was bigger than simple human error. I spent the next week running background checks on our vendors. Most were legitimate. Real offices, real employees, verifiable work. Then I found Northbridge Partners LLC. Their business address was a mailbox at a UPS store. No website, no LinkedIn profiles, no employees I could find. But they'd billed us 7 times in the past year for strategic consulting services. Total amount, $340,000. Jacobs referenced their address with other databases. Same mailbox was used by Elite Aviation Charter Services, the company that managed Guy's private jet. Coincidence? I didn't think so. I drafted a routine vendor refresh request, asking all departments to verify their contractors had proper documentation. Standard procedure, nothing suspicious. Harlan Morris called me within an hour. Iceland, great initiative on the vendor review. Could you bring the Northbridge file upstairs? Guy wants to see our thoroughness in action. My stomach dropped. Of course. When? Now would be good. I printed everything, put it in a manila folder, and rode the elevator to the executive floor. My hands were sweating. The elevator ride felt endless. I watched the floor numbers climb. 10, 11, 12. Each ding echoed in my ears like a countdown. I'd stumbled onto something big, and now they knew I was looking. The smart move would have been to back off, transfer departments, find a new job. But I couldn't let it go. Harlan's office had floor-to-ceiling windows and modern art that probably cost more than my car. He offered me sparkling water with lemon, all smiles and charm. Iceland, this vendor review is exactly the kind of proactive work we love to see. Really thorough. He flipped through my Northbridge research. Though I wonder if we're being a bit too detailed for a routine check. I just want to make sure we're compliant. Absolutely. Tell you what, why don't you archive these notes so we don't duplicate work? I'll handle Northbridge directly. I nodded, like that made perfect sense. Sure thing. But as soon as I got back to my desk, I submitted a legal hold request to records management. The form asked for specific files to be preserved for potential litigation. I listed the Northbridge folder, the MedTech contract, and my IT security alerts. Policy required them to freeze those documents immediately. No deletion, no editing, no handling directly. Records confirmed the hold within an hour. I forwarded their confirmation to Harlan with a simple note, all set. His reply was fast, perfect timing. Just those 2 words and a period. Something about that period felt final. Harlan's casual dismissal told me everything. He wasn't surprised by my findings, he was managing them. The legal hold was my insurance policy, a way to preserve evidence before it could disappear. I'd learned that trick from a former colleague who'd worked white-collar fraud cases. I started eating lunch near Nina, Guy's assistant. She was sharp, organized, and knew everyone's schedule better than they did. But I never asked her for gossip, that would have been too obvious. Instead, I asked about logistics. How do you manage all those executive meetings? The timing must be crazy. Nina laughed. You have no idea. Some people need 15 minutes to make a decision. Others need 2 hours just to ask a question. Over several weeks, I learned the patterns. Harlan always wanted morning meetings. Piers Jacobs preferred late afternoon. Guy blocked out time for his strategic planning sessions every Thursday at 3 p.m. But Nina mentioned something interesting. Guy has these weird off-calendar meetings too. Usually at the Riverside Club downtown. He always brings this blue folder with him. Blue folder? Yeah, thick thing with tabs. He's super protective of it. Never lets me make copies. That night, I looked up the Riverside Club. Private membership, $50,000 initiation fee. Their website showed photos of wood-paneled rooms and men in expensive suits making deals over whiskey. What was in that blue folder? Nina had been Guy's assistant for 8 years. She'd seen everything, heard every phone call, scheduled every meeting. If anyone knew his patterns, it was her. I made sure to always thank her for small favors, remembered her birthday, brought her coffee when I got some for myself. Trust took time to build. The next Thursday, I timed my lunch break perfectly. I waited in the lobby as Guy headed to the elevator, blue folder under his arm. When the doors opened, I stepped in. Oh, hi, Guy. Going down? Ground floor, he said, distracted. He was flipping through the folder's tabs. I caught glimpses. Revenue pipeline, community impact, strategic partnerships. The elevator was small. I could see pages in the community impact section, donation agreements, tax forms, letterhead from something called the Health Innovation Foundation. Guy got off at the parking garage. I rode back up, my mind racing. That evening, I researched the Health Innovation Foundation. They were a nonprofit focused on medical research funding. Their latest tax filing showed major donations from Delta Systems, $280,000 in the past year. But here's what made me sit up straight. They had a subcontractor agreement with Northbridge Partners LLC for clinical research consulting. The same amounts we'd paid Northbridge were flowing right back through this nonprofit. It was money laundering, dressed up as charity. I screenshotted everything and added it to my documentation folder. The pieces were falling into place like a puzzle. Guy wasn't just hiding expenses. He was running money through multiple entities to disguise personal benefits as business costs. The charity angle was brilliant, making it look like corporate social responsibility instead of fraud. I needed to create pressure without seeming aggressive. So I drafted a new policy: enhanced revenue recognition controls for pilot programs. It sounded boring, like typical corporate bureaucracy. The rule was simple. Any pilot program had to file sub-certifications before we could book revenue. Just a checklist to verify dates, deliverables, and contract terms. Most departments barely noticed. They filled out the forms like any other paperwork. But I knew it would catch our backdated contracts. Harlan called me the day after I published the policy. "Iceland, this new pilot certification thing. It's very thorough. Maybe too thorough? We've got 3 programs that already booked revenue last quarter. Can we make an exception?" "What programs?" "MedTech innovation, healthcare analytics, and digital wellness. All solid pilots, just need to update their paperwork retroactively." The same 3 contracts I'd flagged months ago. "I'm sorry, Harlan. The policy doesn't allow retroactive exceptions. Audit requirements, you know?" Silence on the line. "Then, Iceland, you're being awfully rigid about this." "I'm being compliant. I'll CC Piers Jacobs on my response so he knows we're following proper procedures." Harlan's voice got colder. "Fine. We'll submit the certifications." Policy was my weapon of choice. It was boring, bureaucratic, and nearly impossible to argue against. When you frame requirements as audit compliance or regulatory necessity, executives usually just grumble and comply. They don't realize they're walking into a trap until it's too late. The sub-certifications came in the next week. I opened them expecting legitimate documentation. Instead, I found copy and paste jobs. MedTech and healthcare analytics had identical sentences. Deliverable milestones achieved per contracted timelines with stakeholder approval documented in attached exhibits. Word for word, including a typo. Timelines instead of timelines. The digital wellness certification was cleaner, but its deliverables were impossibly vague. Strategic insights delivered through collaborative engagement frameworks. I forwarded all 3 to our external auditors with a note. "Routine sampling request. Could you review these randomly selected pilot certifications during your next site visit?" Random. Right. 2 days later, the audit team confirmed they'd include pilot programs in their testing. Harlan must have seen the same email because he stopped by my cube that afternoon. "Iceland, the auditors are asking a lot of questions about pilot programs. Any idea why?" I looked up from my computer, all innocence. "Just routine sampling. They always test a few revenue streams." "Right, routine." He walked away, but I could feel his eyes on me for the rest of the day. The copy-paste job was amateur hour. Either they were getting sloppy under pressure or they thought I was too stupid to notice. Both possibilities worked in my favor. Sloppy meant more evidence. Underestimating me meant they'd make bigger mistakes. The next Monday, HR called me into a conference room. Janet from Human Resources sat at Jacobs from me with a manila folder thick with forms. "Iceland, we need to discuss some concerns about your collaboration style. Several colleagues have mentioned that you're rigid in your approach to policies." "I follow the rules if that's what you mean." "It's more about tone, flexibility, being a team player." She slid papers at Jacobs the table. "We're implementing a performance improvement plan to help you develop these skills. A PIP, the kiss of death in corporate America. 60 days to improve or get fired." I read through the requirements: weekly check-ins, collaboration goals, attitude adjustment metrics. All subjective, all designed to create a paper trail for termination. "I understand," I said, signing the forms. "When do we start?" "This Friday. And Iceland, we really want this to work out." I walked back to my desk with my head high. They were trying to scare me into backing down. Instead, they just started a 60-day clock that worked both ways. That evening, Nina slipped me a post-it note as I passed her desk. "Friday 7 p.m. Riverside Club. Blue folder." The PIP was classic intimidation. Make the whistleblower look like a problem employee with attitude issues. Document everything. Build a case for termination, then fire them for performance instead of retaliation. I'd seen it before at my previous company. But they'd miscalculated. 60 days was plenty of time to finish what I'd started. I didn't follow Guy to the club. That would have been stalking, maybe illegal, definitely stupid. Instead, I set up a trap using email timestamps. At 7:05 p.m. that Friday, I sent Harlan an automated message. Hi Harlan, per our ongoing audit support, please provide backup documentation for the Northbridge Partners contract by COB Monday. This fulfills our standing document request. Thanks, Iceland. The beauty was the timestamp. If Harlan was at the club with Guy, he'd have to choose. Ignore the email and look suspicious, or respond and prove he was checking work messages during their secret meeting. At 7:13 p.m., on it, Iceland, we'll have everything ready. 2 minutes later, actually, let me delay until Tuesday, working on organizing everything properly. I smiled at my screen. He'd taken the bait. Now I knew their Thursday meetings weren't just social drinks. Harlan was doing work there, handling requests, making decisions, which meant they were conducting company business off the books. I screenshotted both emails and noted the timestamps in my documentation file. By Tuesday, I'd have more evidence of their pattern. Tuesday came and went. No Northbridge documents. Wednesday, still collating Iceland. Complex file structure. Thursday, scanning issues. We'll have everything Friday. By Friday afternoon, Harlan finally uploaded a batch of files. I opened them and almost laughed. They were scans of scans, photocopies of photocopies. Different fonts mixed together, signatures that didn't match, contract amendments with no original agreements. The Northbridge invoices were particularly bad. Some showed different addresses. Others had services described as consulting, with no details. 3 invoices had the exact same dollar amount, $23,847.50. Our external auditors reviewed the batch the following week. Their note was professional, but damning. Significant documentation deficiencies noted. Recommend expanded testing of vendor relationships and contract administration controls. That night, Guy sent me a text at 2:17 a.m. Stop playing games, Iceland. I stared at the message in my dark bedroom. He was rattled. Good. The next morning, I drafted a memo for the audit committee. Material weakness indicators, internal controls over financial reporting. I scheduled a meeting request with Piers Jacobs. The Delta Systems board portal was like a digital vault. Only directors, executives, and certain compliance officers could access it. I logged in and navigated to the Whistleblower submissions section. My memo was 15 pages of facts, screenshots, and timeline documentation. I mapped the connections, Northbridge Partners to Elite Aviation Charter, to Guy's personal travel. The Health Innovation Foundation's donations flowing back to Northbridge consulting fees. The pilot program contracts with impossible dates and copy-pasted language. I tagged it for Piers Jacobs and outside legal counsel only. No management access. The subject line read, Policy Compliance Submission, Material Weakness Indicators Requiring Board Review. Within 2 hours, outside counsel requested an executive session for the following Tuesday. No management present. No Guy, no Harlan, no other executives. Guy found out anyway. He stopped by my cube Monday morning, coffee in hand, casual as could be. Iceland, I hear you're presenting to the board tomorrow. Exciting opportunity. I'm sure you'll do great. His smile was sharp as broken glass. Just routine compliance reporting, I said. Of course, routine. He walked away humming. The executive session was held in a windowless conference room on the 3rd floor. Just me, Piers Jacobs, and Letty Bowman, our outside attorney. Piers looked tired. Letty took notes on a legal pad. I walked them through everything methodically. The backdated contracts, the vendor relationships, the non-profit circular funding scheme. I showed timestamps, metadata, email trails. Piers asked sharp questions. How long has this been going on? What's the financial impact? Are there other vendors involved? Letty was more blunt. Iceland, this is serious. Are you alleging intentional fraud? I'm documenting control failures and policy violations. The intent is for others to determine. After 90 minutes, Piers thanked me. His face was stone. Iceland, we need you to pause all communications with management about these issues pending an independent review. Can you do that? Of course. Good. Letty will engage a forensic accounting firm. This stays confidential until we know more. I walked back to my desk feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. 2 days later, Guy announced a routine controls refresh to improve our audit readiness. He seemed delighted by the timing. That night, IT sent me an alert. Attempted deletion of protected files, Northbridge folder. Action blocked due to legal hold status. Someone was getting desperate. I proposed a company-wide quarter-end war room to support the independent review. The idea was to centralize all contract documentation in a standardized tracker, making everything easier for the auditors to review. Everyone thought it was about efficiency. Really, it was about patterns. When you put contracts side by side in identical formats, inconsistencies jump out. The pilot programs looked especially bad. Different signature styles, mismatched dates, service descriptions that made no sense. But the real bombshell came from HR records. 3 pilot contracts were signed by Alex Stevens, our VP of Sales. Jacobs checked with payroll. Alex had been on medical leave for 2 months when those contracts were supposedly executed. Someone had forged his signature. I added this finding to the tracker with a simple note: please verify signatory availability during contract execution period. The forensic accountants saw it immediately. They requested Alex's medical records, travel receipts, and hospital documentation. Guy called an all-hands meeting the next day. Team, we're implementing new signature protocols to ensure proper authorization chains. Just good governance practices. Too little, too late. Harlan invited me for a walk around the corporate campus. It was a beautiful spring day, trees budding, people eating lunch on benches. He bought us coffee from the cafe. Iceland, this review process has been intense. I wanted to talk about Alex Stevens. What about him? Look, Alex made some mistakes while he was dealing with health issues, cut corners on documentation, maybe signed some things he shouldn't have, but he's a good guy going through a tough time. We stopped near a fountain. Harlan's voice got quieter. If we keep this internal, we can correct everything quietly. No public embarrassment, no regulatory issues. We protect Alex's career and the company's reputation. The process should identify what went wrong, not who went wrong. Harlan nodded slowly. Even if the problems go higher up the chain, I looked at him directly. Especially then. Even if they go all the way to the corner office? The question hung in the spring air between us. I sipped my coffee, choosing my words carefully. The truth doesn't care about office locations, Harlan. The forensic accountants delivered their preliminary report 3 weeks later. They'd found significant control gaps and documentation irregularities, but stopped short of alleging intentional misconduct. The board asked for remediation steps. Guy immediately proposed a solution. He would temporarily step back from signing sub-certifications, empowering teams to take ownership of compliance processes. It sounded reasonable, progressive even. Guy as the enlightened CEO, distributing authority and building accountability. The board bought it. They praised his leadership and transparency. I thought we'd reach the finish line. Guy would have less control, the board would watch more closely, and our processes would improve. A quiet Guy. Then the external auditors requested their annual management representation letter. A document where executives certify the accuracy of our financial statements. Guy refused to sign it. Given the ongoing review, he told the auditors, I think it's prudent to wait until all questions are resolved. The auditor's response was swift. Without a signed representation letter, they couldn't issue an opinion on our financial statements. Our audit was effectively suspended. The board called an emergency meeting for Monday morning. Harlan produced a draft representation letter that weekend. It was clean, professional, and completely inadequate. No mention of Northbridge Partners, no reference to the Health Innovation Foundation, no acknowledgement of the control issues we'd identified. I annotated every omission, cited relevant accounting standards, and forwarded it to Letty Bowman and Piers Jacobs with a detailed explanation of what was missing. This letter fails to meet GAAP disclosure requirements for related party transactions and material weaknesses in internal controls. Harlan stopped responding to my emails after that. Monday morning, Nina appeared at my cube looking worried. Iceland, Harlan's in Guy's office. They've been in there for 2 hours, and I can hear them from my desk. Voices raised? Very raised. Harlan keeps saying she won't let it go, and Guy keeps saying something about nuclear options. I saved my work and backed up my files to 3 different locations. If they were talking nuclear options, I needed to be ready for anything. That afternoon, the auditors emailed the board directly. Given management's inability to provide required representations, we recommend provisional scope expansion of our review. The walls were closing in. Sometimes the biggest breaks come from the smallest details. The Health Innovation Foundation had posted photos from their annual gala on their website. Nothing unusual, just typical nonprofit publicity. But one photo caught my eye. Samuel Powell, our COO, on stage accepting a plaque. The caption read, "Thanking Delta Systems for funding critical outreach initiatives in Q2." The date stamp showed March 15th. The exact week our Northbridge consulting invoices had been processed. I printed the web page and added it to the review file. No social media posts, no announcements, just quiet documentation of a public event that connected all our puzzle pieces. The forensic accountants spotted it during their expanded review. They traced the dates back to our books. Northbridge billed us $47,000 on March 12th for strategic health sector analysis. The foundation received a $47,000 donation from Delta on March 14th. Samuel accepted the plaque on March 15th. A perfect circle of money, time to look like legitimate business. The external auditors emailed the board that afternoon. Provisional scope expansion recommended due to emerging evidence of related party transactions. Guy's empire was crumbling one invoice at a time. Our bank, First National Business Credit, requested a routine compliance certificate as part of our loan covenant review. Usually a formality, we'd been a model borrower for years, but the expanded audit made our financial statements subject to review, which triggered their enhanced oversight protocol. Treasury forwarded me the bank's clarifying questions. Most were standard, but one made my stomach drop. Please confirm whether Delta Systems has engaged in any related party transactions with Northbridge Partners LLC, Elite Aviation Charter Services, or the Health Innovation Foundation during the current fiscal year. They knew. Somehow the bank had connected the dots. I called Treasury. Where did these specific entity names come from? They said it was part of their enhanced due diligence. Apparently their risk management system flagged some Jacobs references in public filings. The forensic review was becoming public knowledge. Other institutions were starting to ask questions. That evening, Guy called an emergency leadership meeting for 8 a.m. the next day. The email subject line was ominous: Organizational Alignment Discussion. I printed everything in my documentation folder and locked it in my home safe. The conference room was packed. Guy, Harlan, Samuel, 3 other VPs, and me. Guy stood at the head of the table, his usual confidence replaced by something harder, more desperate. Team, we're facing some challenges with our audit process. The external reviewers are asking questions based on incomplete information and misunderstanding our business relationships. He outlined a narrative: mistakes, not misconduct; sloppy documentation, not deliberate deception; good intentions, poor execution. Iceland, as our compliance officer, how do we present these complexities in the best light? The room was silent, everyone watching me. I asked one simple question. Guy, who owns Northbridge Partners? The silence stretched longer. Harlan stared at his hands. Samuel shifted in his chair. That's complicated, Guy said finally. Letty Bowman chose that moment to appear in the doorway. Guy, I need to speak with the group. Her voice was flat, professional. The external auditors are suspending their opinion pending additional evidence. The board has called a special session for tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Guy's face went pale. Harlan requested private counsel that afternoon. By evening, he'd offered a proffer to the board's attorneys, a deal where he'd cooperate in exchange for immunity from prosecution. His confession was detailed and damning. Northbridge Partners was Guy's shell company. The consulting fees had paid for his personal jet usage, a family vacation to Italy, and renovations to his lake house. The Health Innovation Foundation was a front, with Samuel serving as a trustee to legitimize the circular funding. Harlan provided calendar invites, wire transfer confirmations, and photos from the Italy trip, all time-stamped and correlated with our consulting payments. I thought it was just creative expense management at first, Harlan told the attorneys. Guy said everyone at our level did it, but when Iceland started digging, I realized how bad it looked. The board scheduled their special session for dawn the next day. Emergency protocols, no management present. I got home that night to find a message from Letty Bowman. Iceland, please be available by phone tomorrow morning. The board may need to speak with you. I barely slept. The next morning would change everything. At 6:55 a.m., I sat in my car outside Delta Systems headquarters. The executive parking garage was nearly empty, except for board members' cars. Through the glass lobby, I could see Piers Jacobs walking toward the elevators. My phone buzzed at 7:30. Board vote complete. Guy Wolf placed on immediate administrative leave. Please report to conference room B for briefing. I walked through the quiet building feeling surreal. The framed Wall Street article about Guy's meteoric rise was already gone from the lobby wall. Piers Jacobs and Letty Bowman were waiting for me. Piers looked exhausted but relieved. Iceland, the board has voted unanimously to remove Guy from all operational duties, effective immediately. We're notifying regulators this morning and filing an 8K about material weaknesses in our controls. What about the audit? The external auditors are withdrawing their comfort with prior period statements. We'll need to restate some numbers, but the company is fundamentally sound. Letty leaned forward. Iceland, the board has asked me to offer you the position of Interim Chief Integrity Officer. New role, direct board reporting, complete authority over compliance and controls. I stared at them. 6 months ago, I'd been facing a performance improvement plan. Now, they wanted me to lead the cleanup. I'll accept on one condition. What's that? Full transparency. No more secrets, no more backroom deals. Everything we do gets documented and disclosed properly. Piers smiled for the first time in weeks. Deal. My first act as Chief Integrity Officer was publishing a remediation roadmap on our company website. We unwound all Northbridge transactions, repaid misclassified funds to the appropriate accounts, and put every vendor relationship under dual signature control. I led town halls where employees could ask anything. No NDAs, no retaliation policies, no management pre-screening. The questions were tough but fair. How did this happen? What's changing? Can we trust leadership again? We implemented new policies that made it impossible for any single person to control financial decisions. Every contract over $10,000 required 2 signatures from different departments. Every related party transaction needed board pre-approval. Every vendor had to pass annual compliance reviews. The stock price dipped initially, but stabilized as investors saw our commitment to transparency. Several major customers praised our proactive approach. 3 weeks after my appointment, HR forwarded me a letter that had arrived by courier. No return address, just expensive letterhead. Effective immediately, I resigned from all positions at Delta Systems. This decision is final and not subject to reconsideration. Guy Lowell. I filed it in my desk drawer and got back to work. 6 months later, I walked through the Delta Systems lobby past the new wall display. Our values: integrity, transparency, accountability. Photos showed our diverse workforce, our community partnerships, our commitment to ethical business practices. Guy's framed articles were gone, replaced by employee recognition awards and customer testimonials. The culture felt different, more open, more honest, more sustainable. I'd implemented policies that prevented anyone, including me, from accumulating unchecked power. Every decision had oversight, every process had transparency, every employee had protection for raising concerns. The company was smaller now, but stronger. We'd lost some revenue from unwinding the fake contracts, but we'd gained something more valuable: trust. People often ask if I felt vindicated, if I enjoyed watching Guy's downfall. The truth is simpler. I felt relieved. The lies were gone, the secrets were exposed, the games had ended. Standing in that bright lobby, I remembered something my grandfather used to say: empires don't fall when you shout at them. They fall when the truth is timed right. Guy had built his empire on hidden foundations. I just turned on the lights and let everyone see what was really holding it up. The truth, properly documented and carefully revealed, had done the rest.